So you should have reviewed week 7 already. So week 8, we're gonna go over a little bit tonight. We'll do week 7 and week 8 tonight. So when you between now and the 6th, to review week 8 and week 9. Week 9 isn't up yet, but it'll be up by tomorrow. But do week 8 and week 9. And then we will have our, so that way you'll have information in terms of for when we meet with our speaker. Week 9 is about conception, pregnancy, childbirth, and infancy. So that'll be a great kickoff to that. And then kind of just what we're going to be doing after the 6th is going to be focusing on each of the different stages. So we'll be talking about toddler and early childhood, middle childhood, adolescence, young and a middle adulthood, and then late adulthood. So far, what we've covered is we've gone over the different dimensions of a person, including biological, psychological, psychosocial, and spiritual. So we've gone over those things. We've gone over our theoretical perspectives of our big eight. And then as we go through each of these dimensions, we're also getting some of those more specific theories as well. Then last time that we met, we talked about social structures and institutions. So just kind of pulling it all together. And then again, tonight we're going to be talking about culture, physical environment, just a little bit, touching on it a little bit, and then focusing more on life course and family systems, um, and just working with families in general. Um, so that's kind of our map for the next few weeks. Um, Understanding human behavior, it really, as you can see, we've been diving into all different aspects of a person. So it's really a holistic view. Understanding culture and physical environment is also really important because it shapes how people understand context and understand meaning, how a person thinks, feels, and acts in the world. So culture looks at shared understanding, beliefs, values, and practices. And it really helps shape norms. And what I want to say about culture, I think that um, in your social work classes, I'm sure this is something that just in your bachelor's degree as well, you've already talked about. Um, and so, what I want to say about culture is that understanding your culture, but also understanding your client's culture. And I think what's really important is that we stay away from stereotypes and assumptions about our clients that can be very dangerous. Um, and can be just a little bit difficult. So you don't want to have a person like representing a whole group of people because they don't, right? They're an individual person. And so just understanding that even within a culture, there are other cultures, if that makes sense. So just because a person identifies with a certain cultural ethnic background, that doesn't mean that they are um, a stereotype, if you will, like all people in this group act this way. Um, and so just realizing that your culture could also be your family, like how your family um, acts, the patterns, the behaviors. Culture could also be just really anything about how you identify. It could be a social group. It could be just so many things. And so I think sometimes we talk about culture and we think more about like race, and ethnicity, but it can be anything. Um, you can be a part of any different type of cultures. So go ahead and plop in the chat um, different cultures that you may identify with or that maybe you have worked with your clients. Gamer, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and cultural humility is big, absolutely, because um yeah, it's just big. It just means that you aren't prioritizing yours over someone else's or thinking that your way is the only way to go. And sometimes it's hard to because of that implicit bias that you are always having. Sometimes you don't even realize how much a part of your culture uh I don't want to say shields, but holds you back from seeing other cultures. So just being more open-minded and aware. And it's always a learning, always learning. And your client is always the expert of themselves, of course, right? They would be able to tell you about themselves. And it's okay if you don't know, and it's okay to ask questions about different things. Um, is that Ashkenazi? Kanazi? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi. Okay.
Yeah, and that means
I
from Eastern Europe as opposed to Jewish people who are from like Spain or Northern Africa.
got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, see, I'm still learning. Yes. Um, so Ashkenazi Jewish, working with yep, Latino or Latina with parents who are immigrants. Yeah. See myself as Hispanic, white, girl, and woman. Yeah. Hispanic, American, absolutely. And when you I think it's hard, right? Because I think that in America, we've been so what society is a same society. We like to be the same. So differences sometimes can be frowned upon. And so it's important also to recognize that a lot of times we just our default is to be the same or almost to see like sometimes people will say like I see no color, but that's really actually damaging to that means you don't see me, you don't validate me. And so sometimes that can be the default of I love everyone and all lives matter and all of these things which sound really good but can also not be inclusive. And so one of the ways that we, of course, do that in practice is making sure that we understand our clients' needs and that we're being sensitive to those things. And so I talk a lot about that um, like all the time because I think it can be something that is you know a subject. So I try to, definitely shed light. So if you are a shed lighter, do that. You're not responsible for someone else's learning about a thing, right? It's their responsibility to learn about and be culturally humble. But sometimes, if I'm in a space where I like to share and just be honest about certain things so that we can all kind of learn from each other, I think is also important. Um, and also making sure that we are challenging our implicit biases because they are automatic. And it's not necessarily something that is bad. It's just the way humans are. So, being able to make sure that you are aware of that. For your social work license, you do have to take an implicit bias training. And they also added the anti-oppressive social work CEU category. So those are both categories. Implicit bias actually falls under the anti-oppressive, um, but there was a couple of cycles of renewal where you had to get implicit bias training, and it was asynchronous, and it was like a quiz, and it was like a thing where it was pretty good. Things that we already know, but it was a nice refresher just to understand how our brains work and how to make sure that we are cognizant and aware of all of those things. Um, how do you, when you're working with clients, how do you acknowledge their culture, or do you? Do you ask questions about their culture? Do you ask questions about how they identify? Um, and I guess how do you normally include that? Is that like part of your intake? Is that like how do you all do that? Susan, I see your hand, so go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about it actually this afternoon. So I'm in intake, on the intake team for behavioral health in Montgomery County. And so we fill out a whole questionnaire for everyone that walks in. And there are questions about how they identify themselves, both culturally, racially. There's also questions about spiritual. And so, like this afternoon, a person walked in, and the therapist did a very beautiful job of saying, "How do you identify yourself?" And the gentleman had been in the US for 2 years. He got really confused actually by the question. So she just reframed it several. Then she defined how she defines herself, and she gave him a couple options, and then he chose an option that she thought might be appropriate for him and kind of talked him through it. I thought she did a very beautiful job, and then he was able to define himself. Um, yeah.
Yeah, great. I don't know if this counts, but when I am doing intake at Planned Parenthood, I say my pronouns are she, her. What pronouns do you use? Absolutely. Yep, that counts. Absolutely.
This happened years ago, but where I made an assumption. So I'm from New York, and in New York, I went to a predominantly Hispanic high school, and so there were a lot of Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, and they all consider themselves black. So when I came to DC and I started working with some Guatemalans and a Salvadorian, I said, "You're black," and they said, "No, we're not black." I'm like, yes, you're black. All the Hispanic I know consider themselves black. They might be light skinned or much lighter than me, but you're black. And they said no, they don't consider themselves black. And then I was like, wait, that was so odd. And then I realized, oh, it's more not no one can stereotype all of them, but the people I interacted in New York were Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, so they consider themselves black, but because all his there's different Hispanics. There's Salvadorians, there's Cubans, there's Mexican, etc. And so when I first came here, I started interacting with other Hispanic groups. I'm like, oh, you guys don't all consider yourself black. I did not know that. And so that was a cultural shock for me because I was just so used to New York that we all doesn't you could be as light as possible. We say you were enslaved, okay, you're black, and that was just all we just used. So that was something I had to learn when I come down here. Don't assume a person's identification. So I just had to learn just to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and that's also something that you'll find with a lot of like words are important, like Black versus African American, because not everyone wants to emphasize the American part because it's not always the good part to acknowledge, nor do they have a history or heritage with America, like, so making sure that that is something. So I often find that I find myself always learning about, and I think the language piece is really big, and it's changing all the time. And so, yeah, absolutely. That is something that we can often say, and just like you mentioned, Rohan, about like where you lived and where you grew up, and kind of that within itself, it's like the patterns and the behaviors of that location, right? With those groups of people. But in different locations, you find different patterns and different behaviors. And so, um, yeah, absolutely. So just something to um, keep in mind. It's going to be something that you will forever learn and continue to grow in. Um, and I think it's good that we have those types of check-ins and kind of reflections about these things. I know you all are going to learn about Sharp, and that also is very reflective on how um, kind of what your thought processes are and those types of things. So just making sure um, I just want to bring that up as well. Um, but also what's important, the other part that's important is what we talked about a little bit last time about recognizing cultural context, especially especially in America and especially in our profession, right? So I think it's really important about that cultural context with the helping profession, right? Because that's what we're trying to do is help people. But understanding how that help has looked in the past, how that help is viewed now, is it really help, right? What kinds of um, historical context is there? It's going to be really important because it might show up in your therapeutic relationship, and even just those ways, right? So, for example, I work in child welfare. It's a very harmful system. And so, if I'm working with a family and they don't really want to work with me, um, instead of being like they're non-compliant, right? They are like their reaction is that's normal. That's a normal reaction. And validating them on how they feel. Because it is called another name uh that it is called is family policing. Like we come in and we, break up families, right? And so although we try not to do that, that is a big I mean, it's just history. It's just kind of it's honest, right? And so not taking it personal, absolutely not taking it personal when those types of things happen, because you are understanding the whole picture, um, or they may be reacting to you too. So understanding that there could be some reaction to you, and it could be a system's reputation as well, because like I said, sometimes we're not always helpful. So things that were in the chapter were about practice orientation, cultural maintenance, cultural change, like assimilation, acculturation, and bicultural socialization. So make sure you have a just a working knowledge of what that means. We're going to take a short poll in a minute to kind of reinforce some of those concepts. I love a poll and I love some questions. Um, but it's really important for us to understand diversity of human experience, and engage ethically with clients from all backgrounds. Emphasis on the ethical part. The physical environment. So one set was about culture. One set of the slides were about culture, and the other set was about physical environment. Um, so understanding how the physical environment shapes behavior. Um, and you see that a lot. We've talked a lot about behavioral theory and talking about the environment and stimulation or stimulus and how someone reacts to that. So this chapter also introduced control and social design. Every action occurs within a physical context that may affect someone's health, emotions, and of course their relationship. So some of the theories that it went over was stimulation theory, control theory, behavior setting theory. And when I do my follow-up from today, I'll kind of break down some of those key terms in a simple way. It just helps me. That's how I learn best. Because sometimes you read so much and it's a lot of words, but like what is really important in all of this? Um, Physical and ecological justice perspectives also reminds us that we need to fight for access to safe, healthy environments. Um, that is a part of the social justice as well, is making sure that our clients have access to safe, healthy environments. So, understanding environmental design, accessibility, sustainability, all of those things as a part of social work as well, and understanding how that impacts communities' well being. I think we talked about this last class about how we talked about environment, right? Like where people live, and how that can affect their life expectancy, right? So we talked about that. And so just understanding how that is really important as well. So let's go ahead and do our poll. There's 10 questions. You can do all 10, and then we'll go over the answers. Okay, let's go over some of the answers. Think share results. Hopefully you can see. Show correct answer. Okay. So for number one, which of the following best defines culture? And the answer is B, which most people got that right. A set of common understandings manifest in act and artifact.
Mine is labeled as incorrect, even though I saved that, even though I said B.
Might have been an error.
Okay, just wanted
I
to check. Yeah,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, but
it
it's
happens.
let me hold on, let me make sure it's B. I'm pretty sure it's B. Yeah, yep, it's B. Two, cultural homogeny. Most people put A, and that is process by which majority groups. Yep, that is correct. A, the process by which majority groups reproduce their values as the societal norm. Okay, number three. Okay, yeah, there's the correct answer. I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know if I picked the correct answer for one. Three is acculturation, the process by which mutual cultural exchange, where both groups retain distinct identities, is acculturation, which is different than assimilation. Four, bicultural socialization occurs when, and the answer is C, a person successfully navigates both dominant and minority cultural contexts. Oh, second guessing, yeah. See, I'm helping you. I'm helping you. So I like doing multiple choice because you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this exam is so many multiple choice. Cultural change, fill in the blank, cultural change involves processes like assimilation, where minority uniqueness is lost in favor of the dominant culture. Something that we often discuss. Um, and one of the things that was highlighted, I think I put that article up when we talked about African-centered approach, is how assimilation can affect um, someone's identity, right? When you have this assimilation, which is our main kind of how we expect people to assimilate to the mainstream culture. Number six, the physical environment involves human behavior by providing sensory information and shaping responses. So that was the correct answer for that, sensory information. According to stimulation theory, what level of environmental stimulation supports well-being? And the answer is moderate stimulation. So you all did really well. Eight, control theories emphasize, and the answer is D, the human desire for control, probably because it has control in there, over their physical surroundings. Which of the following is a boundary regulating mechanism? And the answer was territoriality. And then 10, a city planner adds more green space and bike lanes to support public health. This aligns with which theory? Yep, and it is behavior setting theory. Well, good. I just wanted to do a nice little knowledge check just to see if we were all on the same page. I will also give you the quiz questions and answers as well, um, just for just to review, to help you review. So the next thing we're going to cover is going to be, let me make sure I bring it up. We are going to cover families. Oh, it's my favorite. I love a good assessment. It just something about it. So family. And family is so interesting too because it has such an impact on someone's uh perspective, their view, um, a lot, right? It really does. See if I can make this bigger. So when we think about family, we think about like what is a normal family? How does what role do families have in terms of um functioning? Like what's the function of a family? And what happens when the family is dysfunctional and how that impacts a person's behavior, right? Kind of discussing how um, that micro, meso, macro, right? Understanding that they're all connected. But really for these couple of slides, really thinking about um, specifically what is um, how family defines you or how a family defines an individual. So what we're going to do is I have an activity we'll break up into pairs. One of the things about social work that you either love it or you hate it is that we always in your personal business. It's like, why do I have to always talk about me? It's so annoying. I've even had I've had students in the past be like, I didn't know social work was going to be so like I have to talk about myself and be like so personal. And I'm like, yeah, I don't, it's like, I don't know why we use that as a mechanism, but we like, it's almost like we use you as the first client so that you can evaluate yourself to help you understand how to evaluate others. And so it is up to you how deep or surface level you go. Um, so I just want to put that disclaimer out there that, we love to get all up in to see like what's happening with you. But this activity is really just lighter, wanting you to kind of like how we did earlier, discuss your identity in terms of your family and how that's really impacted you throughout the course of your life. So this is what did y'all say? Unless you're a Leo. So this in this first handout, you're just going to do part one, the individual reflection and pair discuss. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Give you some individual reflection. So before you get into the pairs, before we do the breakout group, what I want you to do, I'm going to put it on the screen. I want you to take some time to reflect to yourself. You can jot it down on a piece of paper, write it down maybe in a Word document. So that way when you all come together in your pairs, it won't be like you trying to come up with it on the fly or while you're talking. Really think about your own experiences, and what no, this is not what I told it to do. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Nope. Hold up. That's not the right one. I promise you I prepare. I promise. Where is oh yes, here it is. This is what I want you to do. Mm-mm. Sorry, I had the wrong first activity. I fixed the second one, but I forgot to fix the first one. This is the one I want you to know right here. Examine the following influences over your life course. This is what I want you to do right here. Okay. All right. Sorry about the delay. Sorry. Here's the new one, new document. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you, it's the right one. Examine the following influences over your life course. Family, extended family, just pick two or three. You don't have to do all of them. Pick two or three. Ones that speak to you most. Family, extended family, significant others, school and peer group, the community, the college years, the workplace, culture, dominant or subgroup culture. So choose two to three of those and kind of reflect on how did these groups have an impact on your values and beliefs, your worldview, interests, abilities, and personal characteristics. How have they influenced you? Um, positive or negative, strong influence or not as strong influence. So that'll be your reflection. I'm gonna leave it up on the screen since we're gonna be together in the reflection. Um, as you're reflecting to yourself, not that you'll be sharing together. And so we'll do that for I'll give you 5 minutes. And then we'll do the partner discussion. I'll give you 10 minutes for that one. So take the next 5 minutes, jot down some ideas about 2 to 3 of these areas that are bulleted. And then how did this influence your life in terms of your values, your beliefs, interests, worldview, etc. All right. So what we're gonna do is there is one group of three, but for the most part, it'll be pairs, and we probably won't do a full 10 minutes, maybe like 7 or 8 minutes, just so that you can share a little bit about what you reflected on. Again, it could be as surface as you want to. I don't want you to feel pressured that you have to like spill all your life secrets or anything. But just wanting you to kind of think about how these things have impacted how you view things and your interests and things like that. So I'm gonna open the rooms up. We'll come back at 7, maybe 7:11. Yeah, we'll do 7:11 or 7:12. And then I'll take just a few to recap what you talked about, just a couple things that you talked about. Um, so being able to understand like those dynamics in your family. A family tree is also important because in order for you to do a genogram, you need to know who's related to who. So yeah, I feel like a family tree is definitely important. Um, and then with the genogram, of course, you show like relationships to each other. And then with the echo map, you show relationships within the as the family as the unit and the relationships with other systems. So both are really good. But really understanding how family really plays a part. Um, in your line of work or internship, how have you been able to understand maybe a little bit about family dynamics and how has that impacted your services that you deliver to your clients? Dan?
I actually had a really interesting example of this just this week. A grandmother had moved in to their niece or their nephew's house, and we went for a site visit, right? And so as the visit evolved, we kind of got to see more and more of the picture. The grandson that we had gone to see there, we learned more about, drug issues for different individuals of the family. We got to see
Mhm.
like hear more about how this network was working on, that the grandmother's mother was still a part of an active part of the family. And just as we were learning that, we got to see so much more of the big picture of the different things that were tugging on um, different stressors here.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I feel like it's so delicate when you find these things out, or I just feel like social work, we're just entrusted with people's lives, in terms of like not like life or death, but more like just information. Like we get so much information. And so like being sensitive to that, but also being able to be like, oh, this makes sense of how you were showing up in the office now that I see like where you live and I see who you live with and like all the connections. So yeah, absolutely. Sarah?
So when I worked with DDA, I was a direct support provider and then a service coordinator, like a case manager. And very often I had clients had this, who had a good degree of like who were able to do certain things physically, but in their head they were not. Whether they had been told their whole lives, either maliciously or not, that they could not. Like I worked with a client in particular who I was like, okay, we're driving her around. I'm like, let's review Google Maps. We'll review the directions together. I'm not saying you'll drive, but like you can at least like learn the road names, when to turn, etc. And she was just like, no, I don't drive. And I remember talking to her mom about that. And the mom's like, no, there's no point in her looking at a map. She won't understand it. And I'm like, Okay. So, and every now and then, I had clients whose families weren't acting maliciously. They just were overly helpful to a point. But every now and then you had clients whose families were acting maliciously or like undermining their autonomy and potential.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So not only just like how it shapes maybe their beliefs or values, but also just currently, like how they are either hindering or helping kind of the work you're trying to do with them can be very difficult. When even though your client may be this one person, but it's like all of these other people are impacting that person. And so sometimes that can be frustrating, especially if you can see something and you're like, oh, if only you could address this. This is it right here. You need to address this. But that might be not be your scope, right? Your scope might not be, deep family therapy. So you have to just be able to, you know, focus on the client and try to see what capacity you can assist them, and sometimes just validating some of their feelings. It can also be hard not to like put your like opinions on them because you're seeing it and you're seeing the genogram and you see the tension and you're like, oh, this is probably why it's this. And so being able to build that rapport and have a relationship with your client to be able to say, hey, this is what I've noticed, or this is what you said, and this is how this might be affecting you or affecting the current things that we're working on. It's always better received when you have that rapport and they know that you're not trying to like psychoanalyze them, even though that might be your job. But people don't want to just feel like they're under a microscope, but actually feel like you are really wanting to help. So understanding that those dynamics can be very key, and sometimes is difficult if your job doesn't maybe have space for that. So I think part of being uh, almost like I always say, like above. I don't want to say above and beyond, but being more than just the status quo. I'll say that. Doing more than just the status quo is saying, oh, wow, let me look more into that. I know one of my students this week told me that she didn't want to get too intrusive into the people's business. And I'm like, "Mm, I, I don't know how you can't get in their business because that's kind of what we it's a way to not to do it, but it's you have to get the information. And so, just being sensitive to the delicate information and how personal family stuff can be, how deep rooted, and how a lot of times, me included, like I feel like my social work journey, and I'll keep sharing it, my social work journey really centered around my family. Like that's why I got into social work. So, these things keep coming up for me. And so that's why it's so important for you to also be able to address your own kind of family issues. I mean, I didn't think that's not why I came to school. I didn't go to school to deal with my family issues. But what I found was that the more I tried to like, it's almost like I used my family for all of the assignments and everything. But once it came to the workforce, it just really triggered me. It really did. And all of my professors told me it was gonna do that. But I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I don't have no problem with that. Like I'm grown, I'm over it, kind of thing. But it did surface because it's a personal thing, it's deep rooted. And so understanding some of those things, just like the exercise we did with that was only like 7 minutes, but just being intentional about kind of getting to know the person and kind of what uh empathy, right? Seeing it from their lens and kind of understanding from their perspective really allows you to see the uniqueness in that person and in their family. So what I wanted to also focus on um, is the genogram. I always throw some things in also about African Americans because we know a lot of the origins of things don't necessarily highlight African American contributions. And so, wanting to show also how genograms are effective with African American families, understanding a family's strength. So it doesn't just have to be deficits that you're outlining on a genogram, it can also be the strengths, but also understanding that pattern of family life. Um, Incorporating resilience right into the work that you're doing. Um, Especially if they are trying to break patterns and be different than how they've grown up. So, validating those things. Also understanding the role of family. And we talked about that, I feel like recently, about how it can vary by culture, like how extended family can really be strong supports and a strength to our clients that we are working with. And also how we just kind of went over family history, beliefs, and values and rituals that are coming from that family and identifying those patterns as well. And also, I want to highlight that there are cultural genograms, there are spiritual genograms. So, similar thing, right? Showing the connections, understanding the intensity or patterns of a thing. So understanding all of those things as well can be good. So I don't know if we are really like sitting down and doing like a traditional genogram with our clients, but we can gather information that we may do in a genogram. I think it's good to know if you have a sometimes your your profession or your area of practice will have different ways that they get the information. So they might have like a narrative focus of like tell your story. I want you to tell your story, and this is how I want you to do it. I want you to draw it. I want you to paint it. I want you to use like some play, or I want you to, so it might not be like drawing circles and lines, but it still is getting that information about the family and the relationships that are there. So our last activity is going to be a group activity. It's going to be fun, hopefully. I try to ask my students today. I have internship on Thursdays. And so I tried to ask them like, so what's a famous family that I could get for our breakout group today? And so they were like, well, they gave me like a whole bunch. And then so we came up with this list. It's not exhaustive, but it's just suggestions. But you can, as a group, pick a family that you all may know something about or know, even if it's a little bit. So my students were like, well, what about the Kardashians? And I was like, I don't really know much about the Kardashians myself. But that was, so we put that on there. The Jackson family, the British royal family, like Meghan Markle. I was like, oh, I know about Meghan Markle. And yes, I was like, oh, well, I would like to talk about that. So the purpose is for you to pick a family that's kind of in the spotlight. One of my students also said Gucci Mane, but I was like, well, I don't really know any information about Gucci Mane's like family. So it's really, so I was trying to pick families. So, but if you know about Gucci Mane and his family, then you could do Gucci Mane because that's like the hot topic right now about his talking about his schizophrenia and how his wife Some people said she's controlling them, and other people are like, she's a ride or die, whatever. So you could do that. But you don't have to pick anything on this list. This was just a starter. You could pick another family if there's some other family that you would like to pick, but not your family, like someone famous or someone that's kind of known to most in the group. And then I want you to discuss some of the things that we talked about. So what you could do this a couple of ways. So for example, for the Jackson family, you may pick your client to be Michael Jackson, and then talk about how the family overall functioning kind of impacted or influenced Michael and his behaviors that we saw. So that's really the point, right? Is to pick like a focal point of the family, maybe one of the more famous, well, some of them, all of them are famous, but pick your like focus client of who you want to kind of focus on, and then discuss how the other members of the family kind of influence the behaviors that you see. You could also, I just put some questions up just for discussion purposes, but it's not that you have to answer all of these. You can just simply talk about the family, talk about some of the behaviors of that focal person, and see like how their family kind of influenced them. Um, if we know anything about generational patterns, maybe we can talk about that. Um, were there any strengths in the family? Could talk about that. So these are just conversation starters, but it's meant to be light, but also applying kind of what you've been learning about behaviors and thinking about how their family is impacting them. So I'm going to divide you into, oh, I gotta do math. Okay, I think 5 groups. No, 4 groups. We'll break out for, we'll probably do about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together. Make sure you have someone who is reporting out in your group. Select that person. Funny that we have Will Smith's real and fake family. Okay. Oh, we do. I thought I saw that. I was like, oh, the Banks and the Smiths. Yes, yes. Um, I'm not into pop culture. I have no idea what these people do. I hope my group. Okay, I would have picked the Flintstones. You can. If that's what you want to pick. Sure can. Um, but even I think the conversation will be rich. Like, even if I was in the Kardashian group, I would be like, tell me about the Kardashians. Like, I know a little bit about Kim, but I don't really know anything about the rest of them. So, I did watch the show, so I don't know too much. I do know a lot about Sister Wives. I'm like a little bit of low-key obsessed about Sister Wives, so I'm like very, I could definitely break that one down very well. Okay, so we're gonna divide up into groups. I'm gonna plop the document in there just one more time so you have it. It's gonna be the part 2, small group, the small group part. So the part 2. I'm gonna drop that in the chat one more time just in case you missed it the first time, and then we will come back at 7. We'll do 7:50. We'll come back at 7:50. So once you get in your groups, you will decide which family you're gonna analyze once you get your groups. I'm not gonna like assign them. You'll be able to self-select or group select it. All right, see you soon. All right, I think everyone is back. So let me hear, what kind of discussions were you having about these different families? Diamond?
Okay, so we actually did the Griffins from Family Guy. So they're a very dysfunctional family. They do have their strengths, like each of them have their own personal traits. Like Meg is very passionate. Lois can be like a control, able to fix things when things are damaged. Brian, in his own sense, can be a role model compared to the parents. Not all the time. The dog, Stewie's extremely smart. Um, Peter, I can't remember what we said about Peter. Um, so their communication style is chaotic, disorganized. It's not very thorough. It's no similar communication style throughout. Um, Especially the way that they communicate towards Meg. It's almost like they hate her. Well, they do hate her. Um, what else did we point out? We also pointed out their strengths is their communities. They have outside friends. What else did we get into? We got into everybody as an individual. Like what services will we bring? We would definitely bring in individual therapy and therapy. Um, so yeah, individual therapy and therapy. We also said that we would bring in family therapy because of the dynamic that they have. It's like Peter is kind of able to do whatever he wants. Lois is able to fix things. The hatred for one child, we were saying that the oldest child, he's kind of following in his father's footsteps, and then the youngest child is always left out. They don't even acknowledge that the baby can talk most of the time. So it's just making sure that everybody's heard and seen. Um, what else did we do? We would also offer Peter services like substance abuse because he is often drunk in the episodes, and I think alcoholism was addressed during the show. um CPS definitely may come as often as they leave that baby. um they leave that baby with the dog all the time. So I think that was one service that yes, and we also talked about play therapy with Stewie because he is a baby. Even though he's very intelligent, he is still a baby and portrayed as a baby in the show. Um, so those were the services that we would offer. I can't really remember. We said individual therapy because everybody has their own problems. The roles that we've seen is that Lois is kind of leading things, but she does hold power. But we also stated that Peter does hold a lot of power too, because his decisions and what he does, no matter how stupid they are, it impacts the whole family. Like it may have to cause the family to leave that state. Like no matter what Peter does, it is impacting that family. I can't remember what else we might have got. Is there any other like I might have missed?
Well, I didn't know the Griffin family could be that deep. I mean, y'all, y'all did very deep. Y'all went really deep.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I can really remember off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Great. And Miriam's gonna do an impression at the end of class. Give us some time. Give us some time to get ready. I can't wait. Okay, who wants to go next?
I can go next for group 2. We ended up picking The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as our show, so that family, and we kind of talked about Will. As we discussed the family, it became very focused on like Will and Uncle Phil, and that was kind of where we kind of started and stopped, to be honest. And we just talked about how Will didn't have much of a father influence, and like that's kind of his mom was having issues with him in Philly, and that's like why he ended up going to Bel Air. and just kind of how throughout the show we kind of see, you know, Phil and his relationship grow, and he becomes a father figure, and so does Vivian. Um, and also just kind of watching the dynamics of like Uncle Phil being the enforcer, and also Joffrey the butler being the enforcer as well. And um, we didn't really get to, you know, what resources or what type of therapy would we would suggest for them, but definitely individual therapy for Will, and trauma-based therapy probably from of, you know, the loss of connection with his father. But yeah, it was a really good, you know, conversation, especially just having a chosen family and kind of a unique family setup for Will. So, or
Yeah.
not in the traditional sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just about to say yeah, it's Bel Air is a great it's great. Yeah, it's a little dark, but it's great. It's definitely not a you know, primetime family show anymore, but it's really good. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I think it also definitely shows how that extended family and how that really can impact a person, and how even people that are not in their lives, right, have such a big impact even though they're not present. And a lot of times in your process recordings, sometimes that's a question, right? Who's not in the interview but has a big presence, like even though they're not there, but they still have so much impact on what you are working with this client on. So thank you so much. Okay, next.
I can go next for group one.
Okay.
So we decided to do iCarly, and her family is basically just Carly, her brother, and her two best friends who are her chosen family. So it's a very small kind of unit. Um, and we specifically looked into Carly, and we saw her as someone who's very creative. She valued humor, and she was very, very loyal. Um, and we think that the best friends were a positive influence because it made her family unit bigger. And also having her brother raise her, we think was a huge influence on her because she also is very much goofy and creative. But he did bring chaos to the family. So I think that relationship was a little more complicated. And so were her best friends, actually, because her best friends were also chaotic. So you kind of see that theme there. And we didn't get that far to discuss interventions, but I had identified family therapy as a good intervention because of like, we don't really know where her dad is. We think he's in the army. And then I don't remember a mom ever being mentioned. And then, you know, the chaotic brother and the best friends who are like her siblings. It's just like definitely unconventional. So we think that family therapy would be good for her.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
Yeah, that's also another one that's not a traditional like um setup or household, and how that looks, and also just how we talk about family, you know, and the things that we use, the words that we use, because they might not be living with their parents, you know, and so how do we make sure that we still are capturing those important people in their lives as well?
Mhm.
So great job, great job. I think is it two more groups? I think it's two more groups or one more group.
Yeah, I can go for, I think we were group four. So we did Shameless, the Gallagher family. Not everyone in my group had seen it, so if anybody else wants to chime in, feel free because they're kind of a lot. So I guess like we kind of started like with there's like a lack of a parent figure, there's low income family, there's lots of substance use, alcohol abuse, pretty much like any kind of bad influence, I guess you could say. So We kind of focused on, so we chose Fiona as our client. So she's the older sister in the family who kind of takes on like this motherly role for all of the siblings. Um, so we kind of identified some of her strengths as like hard work, perseverance, motivation, loyalty. But then I also kind of was thinking that loyalty was kind of another one of her challenges just because she like loyalty was so important to her that when people kind of went another way, it was like a betrayal and it like caused like this whole kind of like family drama. But yeah, so in the show, it's like you have this, there's no parents really in the picture. Dad is major alcoholic. If you've ever seen the show, it's like it's crazy. Mom is absent, but she pops in and out, kind of like comes in, causes a bunch of drama, and then leaves again. She has mental health disorders. I believe it was bipolar disorder. I couldn't remember. So she would come in when she was doing good. And then she'd kind of have an episode and leave again and leave the family like in shambles because they thought she would stay again. So I kind of identified like generational patterns of substance use because all the kids are using substances at a very young age. You see drug dealing in the show. I do believe that mental health patterns kind of started to come up with some of the kids, similar to the mom. And then we kind of were thinking as far as like interventions, like definitely CPS immediately. And from there, we didn't really get too far after that, but definitely some kind of therapy, family, individual. I don't know. It's a good one to watch for this kind of class because you can examine it from every lens ever, I think. But yeah, that's kind of where we got.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think also though those intergenerational patterns, just seeing how it continues, and that kind of nature versus nurture kind of thing. Like, is it biological? Is it just environmental? Like, what is that? Why does it always keep happening? Kind of thing. So perfect. Did we do all the groups? I can't remember how many. I think it was five. So is it one more? Is it one more?
We had one more, and we did the Kardashians, and I nominate Shannon to talk about it.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, that's what was our family that we picked. So um we mostly just kind of discussed how, I guess for anyone who's not too familiar with the family, their father was the lawyer, Robert Kardashian, most famously for the O.J. Simpson case. Families from Beverly Hills, very affluent, and who most or is most well known now as Kim with her tape or video and the reality show that came out from that. So we mostly kind of talked about how like those influences um, were were both positive and negative, just in the fact that like yes, it did kind of catapult them into fame, but it also um, kind of like put this pressure on trying to like keep or maintain an image of this family, and also kind of like seeing the dynamic of how their mother Chris was their manager and kind of held most of the power in their family, by like booking their jobs, being in charge of like social media accounts, curating like images for each like individual child almost. um and we also, talked about how, and just being in a reality show, how that what makes their communication pattern chaotic because, on one hand, you have the individual confessionals where everyone can kind of speak their piece, but then also, you know, communication can change when everyone's in a group and cameras are on them. Um, Generationally, we talked about how this can kind of impact, really everyone's self-esteem just being in the spotlight and that pressure of having to look a certain way, act a certain way, present things online a certain way. And then, talking about how a social worker can kind of intervene and impact that would, we talked about a lot of interpersonal work, um, and raising one's self-esteem, um, using or learning about interpersonal effectiveness skills and how like everyone can kind of relate to one another, conflict resolution that's um, more private rather than just doing it in front of the world, because that can also kind of skew how you communicate with someone. So that's mostly kind of what we talked about there. We didn't really talk too much about risk factors just because, they're um a lot of their like needs and things like that were kind of like already taken care of. They didn't come from like a poor home, or they kind of had access to everything they needed and things like that. So yeah, that's mostly what we kind of discussed.
Thank you. Yeah. Feel like definitely another piece to all of these kind of families is the like social media reality piece of it too, and how that impacts a person and their behavior as well. So definitely when you have even if we take away like the reality part, but even just like sports or like the dance world or like those types of things where they have to have a certain image, could also impact some of their behaviors as well, and be events or even lifestyle factors that are really impacting maybe their mental health or even their relationships and things like that. So thank you so much for that. This was so fun. Nice and light, but still on topic. Um, so great. Thank you so much for everyone's participation. Really, I was like, oh, we definitely have to talk about family systems. So want you to definitely I put a video on there, a YouTube video of a therapist breaking down um, the Bowen Family Systems Therapy. So something to watch. And she has a lot of videos. She breaks down Love is Blind. She breaks down um, what's the other one? It's another reality. Oh, Love Island, Love Island, Love is Blind. She like breaks down different relationships. She breaks down Encanto. I was gonna play that, but I was like, I think this one's a little more professional. But I like the Encanto one too, because that's another good family to kind of unpack. Um, and so you can watch that. I also added an article about assessing Black families, so you can read that. And then the slides from tonight as well is on there. And then like I said, tomorrow I'll upload the I forget what week it is. I think it's week 8 or 9. I think it's week 9. Um about conception, pregnancy, early infancy. I'll put the slides in there for that. Um yeah, I have to release 9. Yep. I'll release 9 tomorrow and put the materials in there. So that you'll have that. Yep. Take it away, Miriam. I'm really excited about this.
Okay, so when Lois is talking to her husband, she says, Peter. That's it.
Oh my goodness. We would have so much fun in class. I just want you to know this would be so fun. Part of me loves online, and the other part is like we miss like those little nuances because that is hilarious.
Thank you.
Yes, 10 out of 10. Yes. Um, all right. So I will see you all next. No, I won't. No class next week. Yep, 2 weeks. Yep, I'll see you in 2 weeks. But please reach out to me if you need any help with the assignments. And please let me know if I forgot to respond to you, because I'm pretty sure I responded to everyone that emailed me. But I was thinking about it before class and I was like, I think I emailed everybody back. But if I didn't, please email me again and I will email you back. Um, yes. Yep, Sarah. Yep. Oh, nice. Okay, come on, meet up.
We're trying.
Yes. Nice.
What time tomorrow?
Start around 4:30 and then it's staggered because everyone